I want to invite you to join me for a special workshop I'm doing in the new year of 2023 in early January. It will be held on Tuesday, January 3rd at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That'll be 4 p.m. on the West Coast, and that'll be 7 p.m. on the East Coast. If for some reason you cannot attend, I will be sending out a replay that will be available for a limited period of time. Learn how to become a pro fat burner in midlife and beyond. The 3 steps to restructuring and repairing your metabolism in perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. So I'm going to be sharing with you 3 ways that you can improve your metabolism, even if you're in perimenopause and menopause or beyond, like I am, and become a pro fat burner. Yes, it is possible. It is never too late. I would love for you to join me. Again, it will be Tuesday, January 3rd at 5 p.m. Mountain. That's 7 p.m. on the East Coast, 6 Central, and 4 p.m. on the West Coast. The link to join me for this special workshop and training is in the show notes. If for some reason you have trouble locating the link, please feel free to message me on Instagram at Carol Cavino Fitness is my account. That's at Carol Cavino Fitness. Today, we're going to be focusing on why keto doesn't work, but also why it can work, and also the role of carb cycling in being able to change your body composition. When I talk about changing your body composition, I'm talking about more lean muscle mass, more lean tissue, and less adipose body fat tissue. I'm talking about having a smaller waist and a hourglass shape. That can be extremely hard to obtain in midlife. And the reason why is hormones are shifting. In perimenopause, estrogen and progesterone are all over the place. Then pretty much everything goes in the tank, from progesterone to estrogen to testosterone, human growth hormone, and we begin to have a problem putting on muscle. And we also tend to store fat in places that we did not store fat before. So as a young woman, that hourglass shape I referred to, it tends to go into the glutes, the hips, maybe some in the upper body where we want it. And instead in midlife, where does it want to go? And especially past age 50, right to the waistline and right to the lower belly. So, in order to get the body composition, we need to be very deliberate with how we train, how we lift weights, and we need to be very deliberate with our nutrition. So, I alluded to keto in the beginning, and the reason that I refer to keto is because this is one of the most common complaints that I receive in consultations with women. They will tell me that they've done keto in the past, they did it with their husband, they lost a ton of weight, and then when they reintroduced the carbohydrates or different foods back in, they rapidly began to gain. And a lot of times when they tried to go back to the keto, it simply would not work. And they keep gaining weight. They might even gain more weight, additional weight. So wind up weighing an extra 5 pounds from where they started. So why is this? Does this mean that keto is bad or doesn't work? So keto to me is therapeutic. It's not something that you stay in for long extended periods of time. Now, there's always going to be exceptions to these rules. And this is the bio individuality of people and how genetics can determine the way that we react to various types of foods. I have had clients that simply do so much better with a very low carbohydrate, higher healthy fat diet, and particularly if diabetes is an issue within their families. But again, this is so individualized. If you hop on Instagram and you follow different influencers in the health, fitness, and nutrition space, you will see some that stay on keto. I know bodybuilders that stay on keto and it's working for them. So there's always those exceptions. But for most of us, and especially for women in midlife, this simply isn't going to be good on the long term basis. And there's a couple of different reasons for this. It can be detrimental to thyroid function. So if you're on a keto diet for too long, it can adversely negatively affect your thyroid function and result in hypothyroidism or low thyroid function. Now, many midlife women starting in their 40s in perimenopause and then increasing in their 50s are going to have some type of hypothyroidism at some point in this juncture, in this time frame. Not everyone, once again, bio-individual, but I did. And I considered myself to be doing all of the things right. And I did have a problem with hypothyroidism. It's under control, most likely due to having autoimmune disease. I'm just more prone to it, but it's such a common problem. So we don't want to do something that's going to make this worse. The other problem is our bodies just simply adapt to whatever we throw at it. If we do a ton of cardio, initially it might be great and it's helping to control our weight. And then on down the line, we find that we're weight loss resistant, even though we're doing a ton of cardio. What happens is the body tends to slow the metabolism down in response to very low calorie diets and high amounts of exercise. And often when somebody goes on a keto, they're also on a very low calorie diet. Now, keto can be helpful if you have blood sugar regulation problems. So, if you are prone to blood sugar spikes, you are pre diabetic, or you're right on that line, a ketogenic diet for a period of time combined with intermittent fasting can be helpful. So, intermittent fasting, you are eating in a time frame. So, for instance, the most common time frame that I like to use is a 16-8. So, you're fasting for 16 hours and your feeding window is 8 hours. And in that feeding window, you're making sure you're getting your protein in and the right amount of nutrition that you need. When combined with a very low carb diet and keto diet, it can be helpful on the short term, but I do not recommend that women stay there. Carbohydrates, once again, can be important for hormone balance. They can help us with muscle repair, even as we sleep. They can help us sleep. A lot of times, insomnia happens on a ketogenic diet because carbohydrates do have an impact on our parasympathetic nervous system, helping us to rest and calm down at the end of the day at night. So eliminating them indefinitely, probably not a good idea. And like I said, our bodies adjust. So what can we do? So first of all, I use the ketogenic diet in a therapeutic way. I periodically will go on it for a very brief period of time, typically after a vacation or a holiday time where I may have consumed far more carbohydrates than I normally consume. And I will go on that as almost like a reset, putting pushing the reset button. And I'll do the same with my clients as well. But I really like carb cycling better. So what I like to do is have days where I'm low carb and days where I'm high carb. So what exactly is carb cycling? So you are able to achieve a caloric deficit in the low carb days without burning out on eating low carb every single day like you would with keto. So what you're doing is you're cycling your carbs. And how many days I'm often asked. Once again, here we are with the bio individuality. I like to have 2 to 3 days per week where I have a lower carb. It just depends on my week and it depends on my goals at that time. Am I getting ready for a bodybuilding show? Am I getting ready for a photo shoot? Or is this just me normally trying to build and maintain muscle on the daily? You drop your carbs on certain days. And like I said, that depends on you. Maybe 1 day a week, 2 days a week. They may be spread apart, they may be together. I like them together because I want to deplete the glycogen stores. And we're going to get back to that in a minute. And I'm going to explain the science behind that. So when you're dropping your carbs, you've got to replace it with something. And typically, it's going to be more healthy fat. Now, I'm not a fan of the ketosis, or excuse me, the keto diet that recommends very high fat, and I think it's like 20 or 25% protein. Not a fan of that. When I do keto, it is clean. I do include vegetables, non-starchy vegetables. I do have higher protein, so I maintain that 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight with my protein levels. What I do then is bring down the carbs and I bring up the healthy fats. But it is definitely fats are not 75% of my diet. I don't feel that that is the best thing for women. I feel they need more of a balance. Fats are very nutrient dense, they're very high in calories. It's really easy to overdo them. All of the so called keto foods on the market that are in the health food stores, many of them are just junk, and you're going to get way too many calories in these foods because they are so dense with the fats. So you're going to choose your days. Once again, I prefer them together because I want to deplete the carbohydrate glycogen stores. So we store carbohydrates for energy in our muscles and in our liver. It's a quick form of energy that our body can reach for, which is good. When we're lifting a little heavier, we're out for a long hike, we want to be able to reach for more carbohydrates as energy. But when we're trying to lose body fat, and we are trying to maintain a good healthy weight or break through some weight loss resistance, we need to deplete that down so that your body starts tapping into the fat store. So what happens is there's no more glycogen, there's no more carb stores, so it starts tapping into those fat stores. I find that 1 day of a low carb isn't enough to tap into that. For me, I'm going to do 2 to 3 days of the lower and then break it with the higher carb. So carbs are stored. They're our most available food source. They're used for energy, for recovery, muscle repair. But blood sugar is an issue that we need to be concerned with in midlife. When we start to have the fluctuations that we do, cortisol going up, we begin to have blood glucose regulation problems. Estrogen and progesterone are going back and forth, and insulin is pouring in to try to take care of the problem. Then you have the hormone cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So if we're under chronic stress, cortisol is actually blocking insulin's ability to come in and do its job. We can get caught in this pattern where our blood glucose levels are simply too high, or they're spiking and they're crashing throughout the day, which is what we don't want, or they're going up to levels which would almost be called dangerous over time because it can lead to that pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, which we want to avoid. So we're not wanting to flood our bodies every single day with lots of carbs. We want to get the benefit of those carbohydrates, but we want it controlled. So this is the purpose of carb cycling. And just like reverse dieting, it needs to be done correctly. This is the mistake I see why it doesn't work is women aren't keeping track of the amount of carbohydrates they're eating. So they're really not ever going into the low carb day. I might give them a plan where I'm cycling them through, but maybe they're having a few preemptive cheats in there on that day, bringing in more carbohydrates than they realize, snacking, and they're really not ever getting the benefit of the low carb day. The second mistake I see is they're not matching their activity level to their carbohydrate level. So, what I like to do is on days where I'm lower carb, I concentrate more on doing, say, my HIIT cardio, my high intensity interval training, and I pull back on my strength training. On my higher carb days, that's a day where I like to do a leg day or a back day. Leg day and back day are days where it takes more energy, large muscle groups. If you're doing a full body, this would apply to you as well because you're doing every single body part and you're having to expend a lot of energy. Now, on the lower carb day, I might do a shoulder pump. I might do some bis and tris. but I focus more on the HIIT cardio and not lifting as heavy. That's not my focus. So, in other words, you're bringing your carbohydrate intake in line with your strength training and your cardio and activity level. And the idea behind this is, again, to improve your body composition, to deplete the glycogen stores, the carbohydrate stores, so that when you do go back to lifting, you are actually tapping into those fat stores first. And then you're replenishing those carbohydrates so that you can repair your muscle, keep your hormones level. HIIT plus low carb is the best way to do this depletion. And then higher carb on your heavier lifting days. Combine this with intermittent fasting, and you are getting the benefit of a low calorie diet. Now, you that might have just spun right past you. The benefit of a low calorie diet is calorie reduction has been shown to reduce all cause mortality. But let's get it straight because I'm not talking about being on a diet or being on keto for the rest of your life and being low calorie for the rest of your life. There are different ways to achieve this. Obviously, if you reduce your calories, you are achieving this, but that's not sustainable. So I like the intermittent fasting because you're reducing calories for a extended period of time. Basically, you're not taking in calories for an extended period of time. This gives your body a chance for many different things, in particular autophagy, which is your cellular rejuvenation, health of the mitochondria, which are the powerhouse of the cells. It's our energy production through mitochondria, essential that we have healthy mitochondria. Autophagy is not happening when we eat. So you're getting those benefits, those health and longevity, potential longevity benefits with intermittent fasting. And just a quick word, something I hear a lot is people say, well, I don't want to skip breakfast. You're not skipping breakfast on intermittent fasting, you're delaying it. You're delaying it. That's it. Maybe you normally got right up at 7 and have breakfast, but now it's at 11 a.m. And breakfast doesn't have to be breakfast food. Keep that in mind. You're just delaying the first meal of the day. You are not taking away from your protein intake. You're not starving. You're not over dieting. You're getting your nutrients into a window. And this is why I like the 16-8, 8 hours being a really good window to be able to get 3 good meals in. So, what would this look like? And how many grams of carbohydrates is a low day and a high day? So, first of all, here's an example. You're having a rest day where you're really not doing much except walking or yoga. You might do 50 grams of less of carbs, 30 to 50 grams of carbs. Then on the second day, you actually might do more of a moderate day. And moderate, I consider anywhere from 100 to 150. It depends on the woman. 150 might be a high carb day for you and spike your glucose like crazy. So keep that in mind, but 100 is a good average number. Day 3, perhaps you're lifting heavy and your carbs go up. They go up to 140, 150, maybe even 170, depending on the woman and depending on your size. Obviously, a woman that weighs 150 pounds is going to consume more carbohydrates than I do at 118 pounds. Then day 4, moderate workout again. Maybe you're back to more of a moderate schedule. And then a rest day, you're back down with the lower carbs. A second way this can look is day 1, 50 grams of carbs or less, and you do a high intensity interval training workout. Day 2, you are doing the same thing. So you're doing back to back, which is my favorite. Maybe you're throwing in a less taxing strength training workout, such as shoulders or arms. Day 3, you're getting more intense. You're going up in carbohydrates. You're doing a heavier strength training day, such as leg day, full body, or a back day, which are large muscle groups. You may stay with that heavy strength training and higher carb for a couple of days, or you may stay with it for one, and then you're back to the lower carb and you're moving back and forth. So in this scenario, you're not using a moderate carb as a bridge. You're either low or you're high. And on the low days, it's teamed up with less strenuous workouts and HIIT. Not that HIIT is less strenuous, but short HIIT sessions. And then intensity level goes up, so do the carbs. So maybe 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, and 2 days off. So once again, the amount of carbohydrates you are consuming on those days is going to vary by the individual. And let me explain what I mean by that. So as I mentioned earlier, I know it's frustrating, but the carb count, the amount of carbs you consume on a lower high day is so bio individual. So I can't give you a set number, but I will tell you what I do with my clients. I find a baseline, what I call a baseline, where I start most people. And typically, of course, I'm going to look at their body weight, their goals, how active they are, and set it by that as well. But a good baseline to start with is to consider your low carb day to be, say, 50 grams, and then your higher carb day to maybe go up above 100 and start there. Now, for some individuals, 100 grams is considered low. For me, 100 grams is low. 50 is, I might as well be on a ketogenic diet. I'm very active. I lift several days a week. I do hit cardio. I do a lot of zone two. I am able genetically, I believe, to handle these a little bit better based on the genetic testing I had done a couple of years back that showed that I handle carbohydrates a little bit better than a very high fat diet. So this is going to be individual. Some women don't metabolize fats very well, and this can be a genetic factor, and they do better with the carbohydrates. Some tend to do much better with the higher fat and the lower carb. Everyone can carb cycle, but your starting point is going to be based on your individual circumstances. So I recommend pick a number, use MyFitnessPal, start tracking, start with 50 as your low and maybe 120 as your high, and then adjust accordingly from there. I suggest two of those low carb days together to give you a chance to deplete those glycogen stores. But once again, if you're lifting 5, 6 days a week, which in the bodybuilding world is common, then that might not be possible. That might be too much for you. You might need to pull that back and separate out your low carb days, like doing a Monday and a Thursday or a Sunday and a Friday. It's something that you're going to have to be a scientist and a detective with. And when I work with my clients, as I said, we have a baseline. We start with a baseline, and then the adjustments go from there based on their progress, based on their feedback. Remember that when you are consuming higher fats to replace those carbohydrates, that they have a ton of calories. They're great, but what I see is people overdo the nuts. They overdo the avocado. They overdo the nut butter. They overdo the oils, and they just get way too many. So it's not that fat is the enemy. Carbs are not the enemy. It's having the right amount. Your choices of carbs matter. Our bodies simply don't respond metabolically the same way to a piece of cake as it does to, say, a sweet potato. Now, I realize I am a realist and things will come up. I mean, my husband and I were out at a very nice dinner for our daughter's graduation. She just earned her Bachelor of Science in Biology, and she's going on to apply for the physician's assistant program here in New Mexico. We went out to celebrate at a nice restaurant. We know the chef, he's wonderful, and he often sends over little goodies. And at the end, we said no to dessert. He sent over a couple of lovely desserts to share. And rather than make a huge thing, I could have just not had a bite and said, I don't eat sugar. I just took a couple bites. That was it. My daughter took a couple bites. We passed it around. It was the end. So, yeah, I had sugar that day, but I was not an excessive amount and I didn't feel the need to keep going. The next day, I wasn't craving sugar. And of course, there's those special occasions. You might have a little piece of pie or cake at the holiday times. So it's so, so important to be realistic with this too. And if you can dial this in 90% of the time, it leaves a little bit of room for the holidays and for the vacations. Most of your carbs should be healthy, unprocessed natural carbs. Now, there is some processing to say oatmeal or brown rice in a package, but you want as much as you can from the ground or from the trees above. And fruit, I find, does need to be managed. It's healthy, it's fibrous, but it is sugar and it does need to be managed. So I always recommend no more than 2 servings per day. And some people say, oh, a serving is a cup. I tend to do a half cup. That just works better for me. So I might do a half a banana and then a half cup of berries and split that up or put all of it into my shake. So managing the type of carbohydrates that you have. Nutrition should be personalized, and that's what I do with my clients. That's what I do in my Fit and Fears program. People ask me, what do you mean by customized nutrition? And I think I'm going to change that wording to personalized. I'm looking at the individual, at you as the individual, and making adjustments based on where you're at. And it's constantly changing. Right now, I have a client in a reverse diet, meaning that she leaned down, put on some muscle, and then we decided in order to build more muscle, she needed to put on a little bit of weight and just the right amount of body fat so that we could put on lean muscle. So she's in a controlled reverse diet. I have a client in a carb cycle. I have a client who is currently intermittent fasting. So they are doing different things based on where they're at. One more side note on this. When you lift, you need to be strategic. So on that high carb day, it is not going to be enough to pick up pink dumbbells and dance around the room. And it is not going to be enough to just do a yoga class. Nothing against yoga. I'm a certified yoga teacher. I love yoga. But we have to be realistic here as well. Be honest with yourself on your intensity level. I find this is key. I've gone to the same gym for years and I observe people and not in a way that is judgmental. It's in a curious way. As a coach, I want to know what's working for people, what's not. If I see somebody progressing, I'm interested in, okay, what's happening here with nutrition, lifestyle. If I see they're working out really hard and not progressing, I'm thinking, what's going on with nutrition? But then I also see the ones that are super faithful but don't bring intensity. If we are taking 5 minutes rest between every single set, unless you're a power lifter, that's different. And we're walking around talking or answering a text message or looking for some music on our phone, we're not bringing the intensity. That's too long of a rest time. If we're not challenging our muscles with the right type of resistance, and it doesn't always mean going heavier, it can be time under tension, we're not going to progress. We're not going to get that stimulation that's necessary. I often get asked about my arms and my shoulders. I get asked that a lot. And my response is I'm methodical. I break them down like a surgeon. Like there's my anterior deltoid, my front part of my shoulder. I'm zeroing in on that with exercises. My side deltoid, lateral, really zeroing in on that with the right type of exercises. My rear deltoid, the back of my shoulder. Again, and then my overhead presses, the right amount. And I need volume. I need a certain amount of sets per week. And you don't have to do all those sets in one session, but you're just trying to get them over the course of the week. And you have to just be realistic with yourself. Do you have time to build the shoulders, the boulder shoulders? Do you really want to be in the, gym that long or working out at home that long? Do you really want to be challenging yourself in that way? To be realistic too, it's not enough to just point at somebody on Instagram and go, "Okay, they have the secret, and if I enroll in their program, all is well, and I'm gonna have the shoulders or the glutes or the legs." No, you have to consider the work that that person has put in, and then do you want to do that work? And then you approach that coach and you say, "Hey, I am willing to put this time in. This is something, a goal I really, really want for myself. How do I get there?" And the coach, if they're a good one, should be able to help you with that. But I get many, many clients that simply want to fit back into their jeans or their dress. They want to feel comfortable in a swimsuit. They want to lose some belly fat. They want some muscle tone and strength back. And that's going to be very, very different than going to the gym and building out these incredible glutes or building out these 3D boulder shoulders. That's a different type of goal. So be intentional and strategic with how you lift. Nobody should be dancing around with pink dumbbells unless you just really love dancing around with pink dumbbells. It's not going to do much for your body. Everyone should be challenging their muscles. Even if your goal is simply to fit back into those jeans, you need to put on enough muscle to increase your metabolism and be able to eat more, burn more fuel, and bring down your body fat. Very important. So be intentional with the lifting. So to sum up today, I know that I threw a lot of information at you and it may be confusing. Cycling confused the heck out of me in the beginning, just like reverse dieting did. But it's about finding a plan that works for you, and you have to stick to the plan. Like a reverse diet won't work if you're just overeating and you're eating a bunch of junk and you're just putting on weight and body fat. That is not a reverse diet. A reverse diet is a controlled diet break over time. And same with the carb cycling. It's intentional, it's controlled. So your low carb day is your low carb day. It's not, well, I planned on 50 grams and I did 150 for my low carb day. No, you have to be able to stick with it in order to see what works and take that bio individuality into account. Start with some basic numbers, maybe the 50 for the low, 120 for the high. Choose some days and experiment a little bit. How do you feel? Do you feel more energetic, less energetic? Is your sleep on point? Are you seeing results? And then finally, do give it time. Don't expect results overnight. One more side note, and this occurred to me, this happens to me so much. I'm talking and things occur to me. If you have a lot of weight to lose, if you have blood glucose sugar levels, it could be good to start simply with the lower carb plan and stay on it a few weeks and then gradually introduce the carb cycling. That's something I like to do in my IF 45 program that I run with women is to get that starting position of lower carb and then gradually introducing the idea of carb cycling into their days and weeks. So I hope this was helpful. I would love to have you join me in my workshop. Go to the link in the show notes. If you don't see the link, track me down. I'm on Instagram at Carol Cavino Fitness. And please do subscribe to this podcast. It helps so much to get the word out, to push the podcast a little bit higher up into the algorithms. So I would appreciate your help with that. As always, I love your feedback and to hear from you. And until next time, I wish you every blessing. Bye bye.